Okay, so we're recording. We're in week 9. What's going on with week 9? Has everybody done the presentations? We did that last week, I hope. I hope everybody gave them. Do I have grades for everybody?
Yeah, I think we did the presentations.
Wow, everybody did them. Cool. I have several classes presentations. Always seems like I have somebody that doesn't do one, but we're good on that part. So past halfway point. That class doesn't need to be on there anymore. I need to go delete those old videos off of my YouTube. We're even in module 6 yet? We are in module 6. Okay. Sweet. So we're all the way down to lesson 6, vSAN data stores. And I believe on last Thursday, we dealt with those 20 gig LUNs. You created it with 18 gig and then you forgot that it was 20 and you imagined that you got 2 more gig from the NAS admin and you went and expanded it. That was pretty easy. In that case, you could, that type of an extent where the underlying LUN is increased in size, you can now add a 20 gig file onto that. Whereas the second part of the lab where we added this 20 gig together and got 40 gig total, you couldn't put a 40 gig file, so you'd still be locked to 20 gig because that was the largest physical space on one device. And that was just a warning. You can link up to 32 extents together. That's unpartitioned free space on drives. But the problem is, what is the size of those? And that could limit the size of the files you can create. So that's a big consideration with storage. It's not all willy-nilly. You ever heard of willy-nilly? Bryce says he has. Do we know what it means? I don't know. Maybe. Okay. vSAN. What's the purpose of a virtual SAN? Architecture requirements and purpose. So let's look here. I said we'd left off on this slide. I thought we had already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I guess it doesn't hurt to go over it again. This is their marketing type SAN. It's virtual. It's not a real SAN because we don't have a storage area network external of the blade servers. All of these hard drives are internal to the blade servers. You require SSDs as a minimum for speed and caching. You can also have a second tier of storage. Well, it does require a second tier of storage for longer term, slower access storage. They could either be SSD or regular platted hard disk. But the top end gray boxes here in each one of these blade servers will be probably like your Intel Optane memory. Have you heard of that?
Not just this.
Well, it was discontinued. Okay, so does something take? Alternative. Well, there's actually an alternative to Optane memory on the horizon. It's called Compute Express Link, and Intel is already heavily invested in the technology. I don't know what was just said, but it came through garbled. Okay, well, Intel Optane memory or something super fast SSD, they're higher speed SSDs, and normal SSDs need to be in place. And then the disk, they're pooled together. So these three computers are up to 64 computers. The files are duplicated across them. That way, one virtual machine that's writing to one drive is actually also writing to the other three at the same time. So here you have your cache. Which is high-speed SSDs like Optane or their alternative. It kind of sounded like that Intel was left with 2 years of inventory of chips. So maybe they're still selling some CDW and some may still have them in stock to buy. I'm not sure. And then it said Western Digital and some others are coming up with alternatives to it as far back as 2019. So there may be some alternative super speed SSDs out there. And then you have slower speed hard disk or disk groups. So anything that's being read and written right that second is thrown to the faster cache, fastest possible storage, and then it's offloaded to the slower storage. So one SSD for caching, at least one SSD for capacity or hard disk for hybrid mode. 10 gigabit NIC is needed. Hybrid mode can run on 1 gig, but it really needed 10 gig for it to function anywhat well or faster. RAID controllers must be pass-through or RAID 0 mode. Is RAID 0 secure, fault tolerant? No. And then memory requirements for the workload, 8 to 32 gig. So pretty expensive servers. You still have to have an expensive 10 gig or faster NIC and a switch that can handle it, really, for it to work good. So not really cheap. You have to have 3 servers for it to work. really probably cheaper to not do it. Remember namespaces, policies. How are objects included in a VM? Well, they have storage policy. How big it is can be applied at different times. There's vSAN storage policy. Where are the locations on the vSAN stored? Basically is what's in the policy. In Lab 15, using a vSAN data store. Okay, we don't have 3 servers linked together. We don't have multiple SSDs and hard drives in our Blade servers, and we definitely don't have 10 gig cards. So we don't do Lab 15. What is the purpose of vSAN data store? They didn't really say it in this chapter, but the main purpose is for home lab setup. That's pretty much its main goal, is for home lab where you couldn't afford a $30,000 NAS, but I mean, you could get cheaper NAS as our QNAPs work. We're using those, they were $700 or something. So don't see the purpose of it. Conference call with the VMware engineers were like, this is just for lab marketing BS stuff that we were told to make. So they didn't even like making the product. Activity, key points. Oh, we went to the end of the file.
Class is done.
So I did tell you, like, what 3 things do you need for what 3 things do you need for connecting to NFS? Up here, fully qualified domain name, folder name, and what you're going to name the data store, right? What must be created first before connecting to NFS? I'd say it needs to be in the same subnet because you want to have it protected. Why do you want it protected? What's true about the NFS version 3 account delegation? Anybody? Anybody remember last week? I think even typed them out on notepads. These are going to be on the test and are very, very, very important. All of this info right here. 3 test questions, at least. You can't delegate it to another account like the nobody account. You have to connect as root. No root squash. No underscore root underscore squash. I showed the NFS share configuration on how to type in. So actually what I did, I'm running, I think I'm still running SUSE Enterprise Linux. I use YAS, that's the graphical configuration management tool. I went in and told it to share/export for version 3. And then I went and manually edited the configuration file and put no underscore root underscore squash. Put a comma there inside the export file. Restarted the server, it offered it out as a share, and I was able to connect to it with VMware. The default was to run NFS service as the nobody account. And that didn't work. VMware wouldn't connect to it. Lucas about remote PCs. So yeah, you had to set up a remote PC yourself with your own password, and you had to link your phone number to it.
Okay. Yeah, it's been giving me some weird issues, but I'll see if I can figure it out real quick.
So the next quiz is over 6 and 7. What is module 7 over? So let's see what 7 looks like. Kind of wanting to throw ourselves into a super group pretty soon, but we've got a lot of people out and remote today. So maybe we can do that Thursday. Module 7 moves into virtual machine management. What are all the lessons? Do we have module lessons? So creating templates and clones, working with content libraries, modifying virtual machines, migrating VMs with vSphere. What is number 3? Lesson 3. Lesson 2. Okay. Dynamically increase size of a virtual disk. Make sure I don't get ahead of myself. They've removed some of the stuff I want to teach, so we'll see if it was still in there. One section, increasing of hard disk size. Then you have to go into the guest OS until hard disk size increased. Kind of like our last lab where you increase the size of the LUN and you had to go into the VMware and tell it, hey, the data store increased. Use the space. Same thing, similar concept. If you increase the size of the hard disk file, even in Hyper-V, VirtualBox, Fusion, Citrix Zen, if you increase the virtual hard disk size, the guest OS has to be told to rescan the drive and expand the file system out with whatever tools that the file system has for managing that. It'd be different for each OS and file system. So virtual machines are the foundation of your virtual infrastructure. Sort of. We're really moving to containers now. A lot of stuff running containerization instead of virtual machines. Some companies have virtual machines running Docker that containerizes stuff. So the virtual machine is holding the containers. But there's a big push for containerization. So managing your VMs effectively requires great skill. So creating templates and cloning virtual machines, modifying virtual machines, migrating them, taking snapshots, and protecting the VMs through replication and backups. So some of this will require us to link together into a supergroup. Well, it looks like templates and clones. So step 4, when we get to lesson 4, we will have to move into it's known as a supergroup because there is no way to migrate machines without having another blade server. So we'll have to team up. But we can start with this one, lessons on templates and cloning. So you can create a template and you can deploy virtual machines from a template. You can clone virtual machines and create a guest customization specification file that will automate the process of like the out-of-box experience. So when you deploy, say, server 2019, and you normally have to go to local server and click all the links for configuring it. You remember having to click all of these links to customize your server after you boot it up, or when you ran server core and you had to run sconfig and configure the time zone and all that stuff. Yeah, VMware can do that for you and automate the process. Most of those steps. And then you don't have to go and configure your machine. It's just already there, ready to go. So that's what this last bullet is. It's really awesome. Works in Linux too. If you got Perl installed, I believe it requires Perl. So what are templates? They're a master copy of a virtual machine. So what does it include? An installed guest operating system, applications that are pre-installed and configured, like maybe file and storage services or Nginx web server or whatever. A specific VM configuration, meaning a certain amount of RAM, certain amount of hard disk size, network cards connected to a specific network, things like that. And VMware tools being installed. So a complete functioning system. How can you create a template? Well, first you have to create a virtual machine, install the guest operating system, configure all the security policies based on your company's policies, and make sure VMware Tools is installed. Make sure all the patches and stuff are installed onto that system. And then preferably go ahead and power it off after all that's done. You don't have to, but preferably you power the thing off. Once it's powered off, you can convert or clone the system into a template. Here they are on the clone menu, where that you can clone the powered off virtual machine or running virtual machine either to a template or to a virtual machine. You could also clone it into a thing called a content library, which is just a library that basically can replicate itself. So if you have a multinational company, you can clone virtual machines into content libraries and have them cached in different locations around the globe to search and pull from. Sort of how AWS and Azure, you go in there and you say, I want to deploy a Linux machine. It gives you a drop down. You get to pick from a list of the drop down. That's basically what the content libraries are. The people can code APIs and stuff and websites on top of it. So I figure that's how Rackspace, AWS, they're using content libraries with pre-configured VMs that they're selling to the public. You can also come down here to template and you can convert the thing to a template. So here on this screen, they've now moved down to the template. So you don't have to make a copy of it. You could just simply say, I'm going to convert this over to a template. It does have to be powered off at this point to convert it to a template, because the vswap files and all the extra files are deleted when it's a template and it can't be running when it's a template. And it changes the VMX file to VMTX. It adds a T to the file extension. So really all it does is make sure the thing's powered off. The icon will then change or disappear from this listing and show up as a template icon where you can't click on it and say power on. You could export it as an OVF file. Now it becomes an appliance that you can sell to other people. You can call it, this is a virtual appliance now, because I exported it to a template. I'm big and fancy. Once it becomes a template, you notice it is a piece of paper on top of another piece of paper, and the top paper is somebody's like got the corner folded up on it. It's no longer a virtual machine, and there is no power on. What can you do with templates then? Right click on them. And pretty much you can make a new virtual machine from the template. You could convert it to a virtual machine. You could clone it to another template. Why would you want to make a template from a template? Maybe version control. I'm still not quite sure why you would want to clone the template to a template. I might see a clone to a library to put it up into a more replicated synced location, but I don't know why you clone to a template. That doesn't make sense. But you can. They got a little crazy with their options, I guess. So once you have a template in place, and you get to reading on your daily dose of bleeping computer, and you see that there's a new volume mixer that you need to include in your your new Windows, your company needs that to function, or a new security patch to block this ransomware gang leak stuff. So you don't want any newly deployed templates to be vulnerable to an active exploited hack out there. Then what do you do with your old template that doesn't have all the security patches and tools and stuff installed in it? How do you fix it? You can't directly boot the thing up and install the patches. So what do? You can convert it back to a virtual machine. It just takes the T off of the configuration file in VMTX to become a VMX file. Now the hypervisor reads that, hey, I can boot this thing up. That's all this conversion does. So once that file extension is renamed, you can power it on, log into it, download the patches, whatever method you have for putting the patches onto the system, install them, power the guest operating system back down, and then convert it back into a template. Not a really hard process. You just make it bootable, basically. You make it a virtual machine again, do the changes, and then put it back as a regular template. Eventually, that's what the clone to template in this previous slide might be for, is you don't want the original template to ever be changed or touched. It's want to just stay there for historical purposes. And you might convert that. I would really just create a new VM from the template. I wouldn't really clone to another template. I would probably just find it as advantageous to make a new virtual machine from that template. And once that was done, then boot it up, make the changes and convert it back to a template. Maybe that way. Potentially, if you're making a new VM from the template, though, it is trying to do the custom spec file and updating the host name and stuff. You may not want that done, but yeah, I guess I could see why you'd clone to a template, and that might be some business situations there. Yeah, if you went new VM from this template, it would change the IP and host name and stuff. The company is definitely going to use this because you can deploy an operating system in somewhere between 2 to 10 minutes, whereas a full installation and full customization might take over an hour or more, or half a day. And you could deploy 4 or 5 different ones at a time off the same template in like 10 minutes. And that might take a couple of days if you're trying to create new ones and install by hand. So there's an extremely speed up for deploying from a template. There's also other benefits from a template. You always have a consistent image. The template's read only, so every virtual machine, you know what you're getting. That's in contrast to cloning off a running production virtual machine, because if it's running, it's constantly writing log files and making changes, and people are logging into it and adding files and touching and doing weird stuff to it. So every time you clone off, even a few seconds later, something's going to be different. You won't have a consistent image, but you will with the template. So there's good benefit. If you're going to have a problem, they're all going to have a problem. You'll have one troubleshooting. Some of y'all are in IT and troubleshoot stuff. It's nice if you're like, I've seen that problem before. It's like all these virtual machines have the same problem because we deployed off the same template, so I know how to fix all of them. Versus, well, all of them are deployed slightly different, so each one's having a similar problem, but they've changed, so the fix is slightly different for each one, and I have to spend extra time on every single one of them. So that's a big difference there. So alternative, this is the alternative, which is cloning. The machine can be on or off, and you clone it. You have an exact copy of that original, but that original is constantly changing. So tomorrow, when you clone off of it again, you won't get the same consistent output that you would from a template. Something has changed on that system. And guest operating system customization. So when you clone off of a system, there's things in Windows. Remember, we had to do sysprep and click generalize. Y'all remember that? Let me bring that up again. So on Windows, they have a global unique identifier and security ID that's created when you install the operating system. It's created basically as soon as the kernel starts, writes it to the registry. And we had to do a sysprep on the system. And we had to click generalize to rip the global unique identifier out. Y'all may have remembered that from LAN 1, hopefully, looking on the screen. So anytime you've got to copy this thing, we did differencing disks. So we had a parent disk, we made 2 copies, we had to run this. So the 2 copies would not have the same unique identifier. There are some tools that I've seen in our class files. I saw one of them looked like it was a SID changer, where you could run a little tool and it would change the SID in case you forgot to run sysprep. So they do make tools for that, but guest customization does this for you. All supported operating systems from Microsoft right now have sysprep built in. So this automated process from VMware takes advantage of that file being on all Windows machines. It also takes advantage of Mac and Linux and Unix by default, typically having Perl installed and being able to go in and customize and run scripts when you're deploying from a template. So computer names updated, network settings, license settings can be updated, and there's the Windows security identifier there at the very bottom. All of this can be automated in a simple process. You pre-make the spec file on what needs to be automated and how the stuff should be automated. You deploy from template, click the customization file, click next. You go get a cup of coffee, come back, sit down, and you log into your new virtual machine with the new name, new IP address. It's already joined to the domain, Active Directory, everything's just running. It's going. Call up your customer, go, it's done. They are happy then. So we have to create a customization spec first. You have to go like under menu home and go into the custom specifications, create a new custom spec, give it a name, define it as whatever operating system and what type of specs are going to be in there. You can apply license codes and stuff into them if you need to. When you deploy, there'll be a lab on all this. When you deploy, you hit a little checkbox. So I want to customize the operating system. And it allows you to click the specification that you pre-configured. And then click finish. Insta-clones. How's my phone blowing up? Okay. So Insta-clone technology. You have a powered on VM and you can clone the running state of another powered on VM. So processor state, virtual device state, memory state, disk state of the destination are identical to the states of the source. This would mostly likely be used I believe in a fault tolerant type domain. So use cases, virtual desktop infrastructure, rapid scale out, dev testing, so virtual desktop infrastructure. What's that? Right. VDI. Yeah, VDI. You may have heard it VDI instead of virtual desktop infrastructure. If you've been around anything, we had VDIs around here. We got rid of them though. They're the thin clients. Basically, you got a Raspberry Pi embedded into a flat screen monitor, and you plug a network cable up to it. It connects to VMware View or Horizons, and you get a Windows 10 or Windows 11 screen. And you have about 100 Windows 10 or 11 virtual machines running on an ESXi system. Maybe not all at once as people are logging in. It makes an insta clone of a Windows 11, creates another second copy that somebody can log into. So as people are coming to work, it's insta cloning a certain number of Windows 11 or 10 desktops, and people are getting them just broadcast to them across the wire. There's a lot of remote workers out there. If they go sit down, double click an icon under desktop, it makes a VPN connection into a data center somewhere, and it connects into a virtual desktop. It goes full screen. And they're working on a machine that's in the cloud or on the company's premises network. They can print and access copy machines, scanners, any resources that's at the headquarters, and it's only being displayed on their monitor. It's not actually interacting with stuff at their house. Sometimes printers and things can be passed through into that. So when you print and it's at a remote system, it'll actually send it across to your local printer. So virtual desktops, almost kind of like me just coming in here and, right clicking and doing a remote view and doing full screen. And now I got a full Windows system, and all the stuff I click on in here is on another computer somewhere. But it's an actual virtual machine. You can run hundreds of them on a single blade server, especially if you got one of those AMD EPYC 2 chips, EPYC 3 chips in there. And the problem we had is the insta cloning. I don't know if it was just the expense that we had. We didn't have enough money for all of the NVMe SSDs. It pretty much requires SSDs. We even had them in our system local inside each blade that they were insta cloning on, but they were still sluggish. Sometimes it'd take 5-10 minutes to get one, especially if a whole classroom of people logged in. And it wasn't just one classroom of people at 8 o'clock in the morning. There was people in the science building, people in Owen Center, people in business and ag, all starting up and logging in. So it's trying to instant clone several hundred virtual machines on about 3 blade servers. And it was 5-15 minutes, and the class is 50 minutes long. So to get everybody logged in was taking the majority of good chunk out of the class. Looking at 30% of the class time wasted. So they got rid of them finally. So we have a lab 16. You're going to create a template. Create customization specifications and deploy a virtual machine from a template. So what does this lab look like, or do I just need to make a notepad of the instructions?
See what happened. See what else happened, but I just, everything was going, working if I went.
Okay, labs. And particularly lab 16. Well, that's pretty close. Page 61. So what do we have? I'm gonna go ahead and save this here attendance, because I can't put attendance in until they fix until they fix banner. I think that's everybody for today. So I'm going to replace this notes. It's definitely going to be on your test, at least 3 questions, with I guess I don't need to be in full screen mode. Let's do this lab. And then after this lab, I think we may cut out, they do have a thing at the BB High School. Anybody know any friends and stuff want to get into the IT field? Spread the word about our program here. Because we'll be signing up for fall. So lab 16. Task 1. Shut down your VM that you've got running. Convert to template. You should have a templates folder created. So that's pretty much what we want to do in task One, they are talking about this photon template. We didn't set up a little photon. We just have our virtual machine. What is it? Your last name, group number -01. Yep. So you're converting that over, shutting it down and converting it over into a template. Of course, don't do a power off. You want to do a guest shutdown, or you want to log in to the Linux shell and do a power off. There's also a menu option for guest shutdown, but avoid power off, because that could leave the file system in a corrupt state. It'd be like pulling the power cord. So we want to make sure it's a generalized file system. XFS, you want to make sure that it is shut down properly. And that would be the case of any operating system. You don't want to do the power off option. You want to do the shutdown option. There we go. How's that? Do not power off. Little warning. Shut it down. It's completely different processes. The people out on the street like, you just said the same thing twice. Like, no, it's different. You're smart. Yes, you are. I've declared you smart. Therefore you are. Task 2. I don't want to see bracket last name bracket dash custom spec on anybody's. You know to put your last name there. And I don't want your last name to be in brackets. I've studied that help screen enough to know that you put your last name there. That's a help syntax, a computer jargon syntax right there. Replace the entire thing with a single answer. And then, of course, append the dash custom spec on the end. So I'm going to send this to you on your screen as a text message. And of course, everybody gets to do this. So that should pop on your screen. You might want to try to copy that into a notepad or something, or leave it off to the side. But at least you got that part, because I got to scroll and do task 3. Pretty much task 2 was just changing the name of the custom spec file. Since multiple of us are creating a spec file, we're using our last name to make it unique. We're using csnt.edu as our domain and our DNS for the classrooms, the 10.10.110. And we're not in the West Coast, so we're not Pacific time zone. We're Central US and Canada time zone. That should be kind of obvious where you live, hopefully. And you can make those changes. Most of the time dealing with Microsoft, they always put the West Coast time zone. Haven't you always had to update that? Anytime you install a PC, you have to change it off the West Coast down to US and Central. The same thing with the lab. Of course, task 3, you're just going to use your template you created. It should be obvious. What did we name our data center? Did we name it ICM Data Center or did we name it training? I don't remember.
Training, I believe.
When are we gonna go shut down? It says shut down guest OS.
Yep. Okay, so I texted everybody. I can also send this in the chat in Zoom. But I sent everybody task 1 and 2 changes. Task 3, here are there's not a lot of real changes in task 3. Except using your name, using our ESX host, using the data stores, share 1, 2, and 3. You've already prior weeks used certain data stores based on your group number. So we're using the same, I think I'm using the same numbers as before. The custom spec, the last part of task 3, part 2, it's the one you made in task 2. So it says click on the photon spec. You made your last name spec, so use that, of course. And the last part of the lab is just deploying a second virtual machine, except a -03 at the end when you deploy it. So you're using all the same, doing task 3, it's like twice, basically. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna text the entire thing again. See, I may get another dialog box. Click. There we go. I'll put this in. I'm gonna put this in Canvas. Because everybody definitely needs these, both of these. We're going to have to do some loading down of our host later on. And we need as many virtual machines, or every person needs these 2 virtual machines to do future labs with. So these aren't, hey, let's create them and delete them. Last time we created our, our little play data stores and we deleted them, but these here, we do need them. So I pasted all of that in week 9 under resources. And I'm going to stop recording right now. This may be the last thing we do today, is finish this lab. Okay, so I think I'm actually going to record. I need these machines too, because I'll probably have to join up with the group. So shut down the guest operating system. And shut down guest OS, not power off.
I need to go on.
Mine's being weird. For some reason. I powered off the ESX. ESX. I shut it down, but it won't come back on on accident.
Shut the SX host down.
Yeah.
You'll have to log into your ILO and power that thing back on.
Okay. Great.
What was that? 10.10.100.2 oh
Got
something,
5.
205, yeah.
This is the one that's 03. No, that's 02. That's step. That's.
I guess OS is taking a while to shut down.
Local user admin. Admin.
Admin and pass 1, 2, 3, 4 for your ILO. It's power management down there.
Oh.
Just click the momentary press button. And now probably wait 5 minutes.
Cool.
So why is my Linux is not wanting to, okay, it finally, it just took a long time. Okay, my Linux system finally shut down. So gotta wait on it, don't go fast. Now I need to convert it over to a template. So using the template menu, convert to template. It'll disappear if I'm not under VM and templates view. Dragging it to the right folder. And task 2, create a custom spec. Policies and profiles. New spec. vCenter server should automatically be selected. Select Linux. Use virtual machine name, domain name, edu. US. Need any script, but we could run scripts if need be. Standard networking. The DNS search paths, make sure you click add once you've added it in there. Custom spec created. Task 3, deploy from template. New VM from this template. Putting it into labs VMs folder. Selecting the only host available. Share 3 for mine. Customize. Power on after creation. My custom spec. Finish. And you don't have to wait for it to finish. To create your O3. Select the same folder, your same host, your same data store. Customize, power on, custom spec, finish. And we'll have 2 virtual machines up and running momentarily. And a lot faster than installing from scratch. We don't have to select what software to install. We don't have to select the time zone internally. We don't have to reconfigure the hard drive or the storage size or RAM size or network. It's all defined in the template. So rapid deployment. It's a little slow going through the steps for the first time, but once you've gone through them you've made templates 4 or 5 times, it gets quite a bit faster. So that was the Lab 16. And I got that recorded for anybody needing to review it again, or those that aren't here. Okay, one last little thing on recording for the ones watching it later on. I named mine wrong. Put a 0 in it. That's sort of okay. I can actually fix that, but there may be a lab on it later on fixing that. I'm not sure, but if I log into the console, I clicked on it too many times. It'll pop up. I can do the control alt, like F3. So I see my host name's Goodman 0-02. So it automatically set my host name. And of course, I was set to DHCP. So I've got a new IP address and all. But I could come in here and fix my host name, because it's definitely not what I was wanting. So if I edit my host name, fix that to a 9. Wasn't full screen. Let me make that full screen. There we go. I can power it off too. So I powered it off. I can rename this. Just right click, rename, and change the 0 and the host name to a 9. It would not have fixed the guest operating system host name. This is only what's being displayed to the screen. If I go into look at like the hard disk and stuff, where is this thing located? It's on share 3, but if I go into edit settings and I'll look at VM options here, general options. I can see that it's still in a folder called Goodman 0-02, even though I renamed it. So it can't change the underlying name because all the scripts and everything are coded for that. So renaming it doesn't fix all the scripts because it could possibly still be running when I renamed it. And it doesn't fix that. I can fix the name. There's one way to fix it. I'll show you here in data stores. So files, there it is, bad naming right there. The only way to fix a naming mistake, I should be able to storage migrate it. So if I migrate it, change the storage location to a different data store like share 2. It will fix the name. So while it's copying across, you should see over here on share 2, it's of course created the folder already because it's in the middle of copying the files inside of it. And the new folder name matches the new name that I put on the virtual machine. So if you fully want to rename and be able to locate your virtual machine in the future after you rename the thing, you must migrate it from one data store to another. If you want it to always be on 3, then I will need to migrate it back, which I will once this reaches 100%. That's your best route for changing the name, is to do the migration and let the script auto update. Otherwise, if you manually rename the folder, you'd have to go check all the configuration files and do a find and replace, and you might miss something. So now that it's on share 2, I can do another migration, storage migrate, and move it back to the other NAS. It's a great feature if you have to update your NAS, throw it away, get a new one. You can easily migrate stuff. You install a new one, migrate the virtual machines over to it. They can even still be running. I don't have to be in a powered off state. There'd be more space to move because the vSwap file would be sitting there. It'd be an extra 16 gig to move if it was running. That's why I powered it off, just to make this process faster. So my happy little mistake, Bob Ross always has, turns out to something glorious.
I think I made an oopsie, to be honest. So I did step 1 to convert to template, and it kind of just vanished.
Yep. So I said if you are in the host view, it will vanish. Yeah. In the lab, it says click on your VM and templates view.
Oh, okay.
Because templates are only displayed under VM and templates. They're no longer associated with an ESXi host. That's why they disappear from the host view, because they're always a powered off state. And because they're always a powered off state, they're not attached to any host, and they are not visible in that view. You can't see it from there.
And moved a folder. No.
So I fixed my happy little mistake. Again, you notice in VM host and clusters view, I can't see my virtual machine template. I can only see it under VM and template view in the lab templates folder. So I'll look at my data store, share 3, and both of my files back into share 3. So there's share 2, share 1. Now I think I'm done for today. Recording? Possibly.